Hello friends and freundins, and welcome to another episode of the Troglodyte channel. Today I will paint and weather the tiny but cute Soviet self-propelled gun SU-18 from Hobby Boss Models. You know, the one that I built in the previous episode. And I will also make a tiny simple diorama base to place it on. So let's see how I did it. First I removed the few pieces of stowage from the back. Then I primed the vehicle with a fine black AK spray primer. I tried to do a clean job and not to miss any hard to reach spots. I went over it carefully with many short but precise spray bursts. And of course I did the same to the diorama base and the stowage pieces that will go on the back of the tank. After it was dry, I sprayed it a couple of times from the top with a grey primer, just to add a few mild highlights and shadows. Then I went back inside to continue with my trusty airbrush. And I just called the airbrush trusty in an ironic way. Because it is not. Anyway, I masked the tracks to make sure that we wouldn't have any unpleasant overspray. And I made a nice mixture of Soviet green color. I put my air compressor to low and started painting each panel individually on the surface of the tank. And I have to happily admit that this is the first time that I'm actually satisfied with the airbrush work that I did on a tank. Thank you, airbrush. Your loyalty and supreme skills will not go unnoticed. After the paint had dried, I applied the sponge chipping method all around the surface of the vehicle. With the right amount of paint on the sponge and a few careful moves, one can achieve a very nice worn and torn look on the edges of each surface. The first thing I did after the chipping was to apply the decals. I did this with the help of the VMS setter and softener. I had a spot where the paint was totally removed where I applied the softener, and the black primer was visible underneath. Now, the reason why this happened I do not exactly know, but I covered it with a little bit of green paint, and now it looks okay. Once the chipping was done and the decals were applied, I started with the weathering of the tracks. I achieved this with my Life Color Rust and Dust set. I went over the tracks with each color individually, heavily diluted in water. And I did the same on the back, on the part where the exhaust is located. Then I will go over again with the same colors, but this time a little bit less diluted in water or not at all. Adding random brush strokes here and there, in order to give each piece a unique and realistic color blend. And then I would go back and correct the places where I didn't like the result, adding or removing any color necessary. It takes a little bit of time for the colors to dry so that you can actually see what you're doing. But if the end result is satisfying, then we are good. After the rust colors were dry, I added a little bit of silver on the edgy surfaces and on the teeth of the tracks. Then I used the same light green that I did the chipping before to create some light scratches on the edges of the vehicle. I also highlighted the bolts, and there's many of them on this tank, and I added some more chipping here and there to blend it all together and make it look nice. Then I sprinkled a little bit of dusty white wherever I would find it necessary. Well, it's not exactly necessary, but it makes it look much more interesting. I then painted the few stowage pieces that I've chosen to place on this tank. And after that, I started making the paste that would represent the mud that has accumulated on the lower parts of the tank. Looking back now, I think I should have chosen a darker brown color. I applied it all over behind the road wheels, on the suspension and on the underside of the vehicle. It turned out pretty good and I really like the texture. Then I painted black the surfaces of the wheels and the return rollers that touch the tracks. And I covered them with some more mud, but only on the sides, not the horizontal surfaces. I placed the stowage on the back and did some more chipping where I thought it was needed. Then it was time for the black panel liner, which I used to emphasize the bolts and any other protruding surface in general. I also made some irregular shapes on the flat surfaces, which later I refined with the help of an enamel thinner and a brush. And once again I should say, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out, but maybe I should have added some brown panel liner as well. It is what it is at this point, so I proceeded with the application of some pigments. Actually just one. I used textured brown earth from VMS, and after I strategically placed some enamel binder on certain spots, I sprinkled the pigment on top of it. I carefully went this way all around the tank, and of course on the flat surfaces of the tracks. And that's the vehicle pretty much done. So now I turned my attention to the diorama base, which I airbrushed with a light brown from Vallejo. Then I painted the individual small stones on the surface until I got bored. I actually used 3 different colors, but you cannot see much of a difference here. The surface looked a little bit boring to me, so I decided to add some more colors on the ground. And I also painted the sides of the diorama in random different shades of brown. Then I airbrushed some grass tufts in order to get them in a darker green shade, and I chose a few other plants that I thought would look nice on this tiny scenic base. First I placed a small twig to represent a fallen log, and then I started placing the grass tufts one by one. Once I was happy with the way the vegetation looked, I covered the surface with some PVA glue heavily diluted in water and sprinkle on top of it random parts of dry grass and plants. As an epilogue, I painted the fallen log on the ground, which I forgot to record. And the last thing I did was to seal the whole scene in a nice coat of matte Vallejo varnish. After that, it was time to call it pretty good. So here you have it, the final result. The troglodyte is very happy with the way this tiny SPG diorama looks. If you guys and gals enjoyed my video, please click the like button. And you can also subscribe to my channel. This way you will be notified for all the future videos I upload. I bet you would find that really useful, wouldn't you? You could also write me your thoughts and ideas on the comment section below. This way I will know your opinion about this project and the way it turned out. Thank you for watching this episode, and I will see you in the next one.